It was surreal. But when we looked at the voter turnout rate, and also in light of some of the misinformation that has been drowning many of the constituents, we understand what happened a little bit better. The voter turnout rate in Steve and Richmond East in the past 3 elections has been continuously dropping from 2015's 60.25% to 2019's 56.94% to 2021's 52.77%. In other words, over 3,000 eligible voters did not vote in 2021 when they had voted just mere 23 months ago. And my opponent's garnered, the number of votes that he garnered was actually lower than the vote that I had in the 2015 election.
The 2015 election in which you lost?
Yes, that's okay, right. I lost, but I had 16,630.
Okay, so what you're saying is you had a higher vote count in 2015 during the election loss than your opponent had in 2021 for an election victory.
Correct.
The man on the right, is that Kenny Chu? That's
Kenny Chu.
And was he a conservative MP or was he just a candidate?
No, he was a conservative MP for Steveston Richmond in British Columbia, and that was one of the ridings that was targeted by the People's Republic of China. And what he's explaining there has been the theme of a lot of the Chinese intimidation tactics that not only Kenny Chu testified to, but also Jenny Kwong from the NDP. So what happened is that, as we know, in Canadian elections, how you vote isn't public, but if you voted is available to the party. And what happened was the Liberal candidate won the riding with fewer votes than Kenny Chu lost the first time around. And what he's saying is, and he testified to it later, and so did Jenny Kwan, is that Chinese voters, ethnically Chinese voters, and his riding is 50% ethnically Chinese, they were so afraid of voting in an election where the Conservative candidate might win that they didn't even want their names to turn up on the voter roll. And so that's how the Liberal candidate won. It wasn't so that in his riding that candidate or that votes were driven to the Liberal, because that wasn't the case. The Chinese voters were intimidated to stay home because you could face ramifications if you had voted in an election in a riding where the Conservative won.
And there's these all Chinese social media apps, not Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn or any Canadian or American things. They're like, I think one of them is called WeChat, and they're run out of China. They're in all Chinese language. They have the news feeds. You do business with them. And it was a Niagara Falls of anti-conservative propaganda. And yeah, I mean, I hate the phrase disinformation because Trudeau uses it against any of his critics, including us. But in this case, it actually was the Chinese government lying to Canadian Chinese people about the Conservatives and about the election and terrifying them.
Yes. The disinformation that targeted Kenny Chu was because he proposed a foreign agents registry. And the disinformation that was floating around WeChat, where a lot of this is organizing, was that it would basically stifle the free speech of ethnically Chinese voters. And they were being told that they would be censored in Canada because of his proposed foreign agents registry. And Olivia, I'm going to put you on the spot. And I want to go to a clip. And it was the dumbest question of the day, which was naturally asked by a lawyer for Justin Trudeau's Attorney General. And there was a lot of victim blaming happening, to use the language of the left. The lawyer asked, well, Kenny Chu, if they were lying about you on WeChat, why didn't you just go on WeChat and try to combat the disinformation that was being organized by the PRC against you there? And Kenny answered in a way that, I mean, the AG should have known better, because these are government and parliamentary rules that Kenny was referring to.
the member of parliament, the House of Commons has prohibited us from using WeChat when I was a member of parliament because of security concern. It was just weeks ago I was an MP, and then during the election I'm not. And knowing the danger that I'm submitting myself to, we have made a conscious decision not to get a WeChat account nor engage with people on WeChat.
Isn't that interesting? So, I mean, WeChat is a Chinese government-controlled spyware, malware. It also does commerce. It also is social media, but it is a tool of espionage, a tool of political operation. And isn't that a fascinating thing that he was actually forbidden by Canadian security rationale for going on there? Isn't that amazing? And that the Liberals' lawyer would ask him that shows, well, it shows a lot of things. Thank you for that clip. Let's keep going. Why don't you choose the next video? I see Olivia has laid them out, but why don't you choose the next one to make sure we're doing this story justice? Go ahead.
Sure. So another one of the themes from the commission testimony on Wednesday was that the Liberals were using accusations of racism, anti-Asian racism, to shut up Asian conservative MPs who were raising concerns on behalf of their Asian constituents. And one of the things that they used this shut-uppery on was questions about the Winnipeg Biolab, and Kenny Chu testifies to that.
Well, it was during the pandemic, and I remember it was just months before that, before the parliament rose, we started the discussion and the trying to find fact-finding on the Winnipeg National Microbiology Lab, what happened, under what circumstances the scientists were dismissed, their security clearance removed, and there were a lot of talk about anti-Asian racism, even coming from the government MPs and even the prime ministers in response to our questioning. And as I explained to you, Madam Commissioner, I have a very high regard of Canada's democracy. And it was a very disillusioned moment when I see that the Parliament of Canada had asked 4 times for documents for the National Microbiology Lab situations, and the government keep on ignoring it, and even took the Parliament, represented by the Speaker, to court. And then when that didn't work, the government decided, or the governing party decided to pull the plug and call an election on that in the midst of COVID-19 pandemic that we are suffering. So it was a very chaotic moment. It was also a very polarized moment. People, there have been supportive of the mandate, against mandates, masking, and all that.
So here you have Kenny Chu, who's a Chinese Canadian, who talks about his love for democracy. He's worried about China. He's calling for a foreign agent registry. He's curious about these Chinese agents who, as we now know, stole viruses from for all we know, the COVID-19 virus came from Canada. I mean, we still don't have the truth about what was stolen. I understand that they may have stolen the Ebola virus. And Trudeau is up to his eyeballs in this and calling anyone racist and blocking it. It's painful to see Kenny Chu, who wants to put his best foot forward as a patriotic Canadian, be roughed up by this. Trudeau really is a racist when you think about it.